I have a bit of a tidbit I want to share with you guys today. I am, I'm one way or another on calling it interesting because this may or may not be of any interest to you, but it's cool to me. So when I first decided that I was going to do story time, the piece that I started writing was initially set in the Heights. Storytime was always going to be this thing that was about my roots. It was going to be love stories. It was going to be me coming back to what was always kind of my center or my set point, just in a different medium. And so, like I said, I went to the Heights, and what I started writing actually took place in Posh Petals. If you have read Me Plus Somebody's Son, you've actually seen that scene retooled a little bit to fit what I knew the story to be by the time it came around to taking place within the bounds of that story. But that's where that initially came from. I was always going to be revisiting that, but for whatever reason, it just wasn't working around in my head. And what I was able to work with was something that was so far left of what the original idea for Storytime was. It was vampires. Vampires is getting pretty far away from warm and fuzzy Heights. That's just pretty far away. But I wanted to tell the story, and so I did. And then once I had told that story, I still didn't take Storytime back to what it was supposed to be. From there, we got a suspense story. And while, again, I really loved and enjoyed telling that story, it still just wasn't bringing us back to what I wanted. And so what I'm getting at is that now a whole year has passed since I initially introduced Storytime, and I feel like finally now is the time to come back to what it's supposed to be. And so the way this is going to go is that we're going to revisit the Heights for some tales that kind of center around Halloween. None of them are, I won't even say none of them are very scary. None of them are scary at all. It's just peeking into the lives of some of the people in the Heights. We're going to see some familiar faces. We're going to meet some new people. And yeah, that's just how it's going to go. Depending on how I feel, I guess we might get a little more of these for the different holidays that's coming up. We have holiday season is approaching us, and yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I am going to go ahead and get into it. For this first story, and for all the stories really, I'm aiming at 1 or 2 episodes for each of these stories, just depending on the length. But where we're going to start is in episode 1. This one will have 2 or 3 episodes, but we're actually going to start with Eddie and Astrid. And I have not named the story yet. Hopefully I'll have it named by the time I actually present this to you guys for listening. But we're going to take a peek into Eddie and Astrid from Something Like Love, if you've read my Serendipitous series. We're going to see what they're up to. Let's go. He still liked to watch. I would have expected it to get old to him. The novelty of sneaking up on me to observe my solo practice wearing away with the years like the ink on a favorite t-shirt. But nope. Didn't seem like it ever did. He never disturbed me, or at least never intentionally. Never did anything I couldn't easily tune out in favor of reconcentrating on my movements to finish whatever I deemed as today's necessary poses. I did that this time too, knowing that Eddie's watchful gaze was following my every move. Still, I gave it the same care and focus as always, and didn't even cut it short as I would sometimes do. When I was done, I opened my eyes and turned to the door to see him still standing there. Arms crossed, face neutral, but eyebrows pulled into a scowl. Surprisingly, So we're doing surprise parties now? He asked. Damn it. I wanted to know who'd run their mouth, but I couldn't ask without telling on myself and cluing him into the fact that, yes, I was indeed throwing him a party. It was his 40th birthday. How could I not? Through the nearly 4 years we'd been together, I'd respected his desire for very low-key celebrations. So low-key that hardly anyone else was involved. But with his birthday butting right up against one of my favorite, nothing about this is holy, but it's an opportunity to buy shit and have fun anyway days, it had always been ripe for something like this. And with this being a milestone birthday for him, and because I loved him, there was no way I was letting this opportunity get away from me. He was definitely going to hate it, though. Well, that, or he would pretend to hate it while secretly being very, very pleased about it. Either of those options worked for me because, in either scenario, I got to throw the party I wanted, so win-win. I have no idea what you're talking about, Edison, I said, pulling myself up from the floor. Now the neutrality of his mouth shifted to a frown. Asteroid, he droned, all serious and sexy. Don't play with me. But playing is all I want to do, I teased, walking up to tug at the sweat-soaked, slim-fitting athletic t-shirt he wore. Thanks to his daily yoga practice and his consistent commitment to running, the man still had the same out-of-this-world yoga body from when we first met. Actually, the yoga had made him even better. Late last night, he had me folded up like a pretzel, and he was right there with me, too. Just thinking about it had me ready to try those particular moves again, but neither of us had time. I've got to get to the studio, I whispered against his lips, then planted a kiss there before I tried to slip past him in the doorway. He grabbed my hand, but didn't stop my forward momentum as I headed for the bathroom to grab a quick shower before I made it to the yoga studio for my first class of the day. Don't try to get away from the conversation, he insisted, following me all the way inside, where he started stripping from his clothes too. He was fresh in from a run, which had me wondering if he'd run into the big mouth who said something about the party just this morning. What conversation? I asked, stopping after I pulled my tank top over my head. Eddie's gaze settled at my breast for a moment before they came up to my face. The conversation about this party that I do not want. What party? I did my best to keep a baffled look on my face, but he wasn't buying it at all. And he made sure I knew that once we were both stripped down and in the shower, with him pressing me against the smooth stone tile wall with my legs anchored around his hips. No party, he repeated, giving me a firm upper stroke and staying there, a move that always drove me a little crazy with pleasure. But I had one right back for him, clenching my pelvic floor to tighten around him, giving him one of the pussy hugs that had him hooked on me in the first place. I have no idea what you're talking about. Good morning. A big smile bloomed on my face at the sound of my apprentice's voice. Well, apprentice made it sound a lot more formal than it was. Simeon liked yoga, and he wanted a job here, so I was training him for his certification. A job I really had no particular interest in, especially with how busy the studio had been lately. But that same busyness made his presence a lot more helpful. He was at a point where he could help during class and was almost ready to host a few of his own, which could free up my time for other things, like planning unwanted surprise birthday parties. I accepted the hug Simeon offered, laughing as always about the way he dwarfed me in size. It was no coincidence that he was formerly a professional football player who left under circumstances he was still sour over and never really cared to talk about. Which was fine, and I didn't push because I knew a thing or two about not wanting to dig into trauma. With all that said, the man definitely had the size to handle something like being on a football field, and many of the women around here had been quite excited to have him around lately. In class and just around the neighborhood in general. Maybe he had something to do with the sudden influx in class attendance. How are those knees treating you today? I asked as I unlocked the door to the studio where he'd been waiting outside for me. As soon as we were inside, he easily went to work with turning the lights on for the other instructors who would start arriving to prepare for their own first of the morning classes within the next hour or so. About the same as usual, he called from somewhere in the back as I stepped into my classroom to start my own preparations. A moment later, he was back at the doorway. The turmeric supplement doesn't seem to be helping. Yeah, I nodded. Pretty sure I told you you were probably going to need more than just the holistic aspect of this. Eddie used to have trouble with his knees. He's a runner, which is really taxing on the body. Yoga helped him, but it doesn't seem to be doing quite as much as we'd hoped for you. So I'm thinking you might want to talk to an orthopedic doctor. I was all for doing things the natural homeopathic way as much as I could, but that wasn't the appropriate approach for everything. The human body struck a dichotomy between incredibly strong and incredibly fragile. It was a tough balance to maintain, and sometimes, even when we really didn't want to, Western medicine was really what the body needed. As I expected. Simeon shook his head, not to tell me no, but in rejection of the idea itself. Whatever had happened for him to leave the team, I knew it had involved a certain period of lots of poking and prodding when there was still some hope that his same level of physicality could be recovered. It didn't work. He told me that much when he showed up at the studio for the first time, seeking some sort of relief. And in the year that had passed, I'd definitely seen him make some major strides in strength and flexibility, but at this point, we'd done all we could. He needed a doctor. I'll consider it, okay? He told me, and I nodded, raising my hands. Hey, that's all I'm asking, is for you to consider it. No pressure here. I just don't want to see you suffering. The concern is definitely appreciated, he told me with a smile. I'm going to go ahead and start grabbing the sanitized mats from the back to bring them up, okay? I knew he was just trying to get away from me, but I wasn't in the business of trying to push him further than he wanted to go. So mentally, I moved on, getting ready for my class. I grinned when a few friends were the first people to come in, right before we started. I exchanged greetings with them and then propped my hands on my hips to ask, now, which one of you big mouth heifers told Eddie about this party? Eddie. Nobody had to tell me about the party. I just knew Astrid, despite the years I'd spent trying to do anything but that. Somehow, I still wasn't completely convinced it wasn't some sort of witchcraft on her part. I'd gone from not being able to stand the sight of her to barely tolerating the absence of her. Only because it was necessary sometimes. Which was the only reason I was letting this whole party thing ride. I wasn't one of those people who was afraid of aging or ashamed to tell people how old they were, didn't like being celebrated, none of that. There was no shortage of vanity over here, or ego. What I did lack, however, was patience for a vast majority of people, so the idea that I even liked enough motherfuckers to fill up a party was laughable. Mostly everybody I liked was already here in the Heights, and I could admit to tolerating them. And Astrid wanted to do it, so here we were. I really would have thought that Halloween and Halloween-adjacent activities weren't her thing, considering cosmic, spiritual, godly sort of things she was into. But she'd explained to me one night a couple years back before leaving our apartment in tiny green shorts, a bikini top, and a big-ass yellow flower headpiece, stating she was going to a party as a sunflower. I don't play with demons, and they don't play with me, so I have nothing to be worried about when it comes to Halloween. I don't speak for or try to claim what anybody else's intentions are, but for me, I just want to dress up and eat candy. And that made sense to me. I certainly wasn't about to dress up with her, but I'd certainly claimed the benefits of the ready, tipsy pussy she brought home with her. And so, it had gone like that for the last few years. Skimpy-ass costumes and drunk sex were our Halloween traditions. Something about my 40th birthday made her want to do something different, though. Something more. I mean, I guess I could celebrate making it this long. My birthday wasn't actually on Halloween. It was the day before, which, for party purposes, worked out a little better this year since my birthday was the Friday, which meant any partygoers were going to get a chance to hop out in 2 different costumes for 2 different crowds. They could come to the party and still have whatever their original Halloween plans were. Damn, was I really rationalizing plans for a Halloween party I didn't even want? Yes, I was. Her and those damn pussy hugs. Witchcraft. Since I was going along with the party, I figured I may as well look the part with a fresh haircut. So I made my way down to the barbershop during a break from tattooing, which was always busier this time of year. As soon as I stepped in, I got a lot of greetings and chatter from the regular crowd that was always in there, and I was lucky enough to have timed my appointment perfectly so I could head straight to Troy's chair. "Hey," I called out to the shop at large. Not everybody would have been invited to my party because not everybody was from the neighborhood, and I knew Astrid would be a bit selective with the list. Everybody I cared about was definitely on the list though, so I had no qualms about asking, which of you niggas knew about this damn party and didn't say anything? Yeah, I was fishing. Astrid probably thought someone had spilled the beans to me, but the truth was, I just knew her. I knew her thought processes. To her mind, this was an important milestone birthday, and she would want to do more than usual. She would want me to celebrate it. And I'd overheard her on the phone with the owners at the Hideaway Bar, negotiating the basement party room rate. "Ah, hell," Nixon complained from another chair. There wasn't even a barber behind it, which let me know he was just in here kicking it. "Who told you?" he asked. "Please tell me it was one of the women. You know they love to say we gossip. We can't be out here proving that right." Chuckling, I shook my head. "Unfortunately, bro, you definitely just proved it right. Nobody had told me. I just guessed. And here you go." "Ah, that's cold," Nix laughed. "You ain't have to do us like this." "Nah, y'all didn't have to do me like this, encouraging a party. How long have I been here? And I've never had a damn party for me." Above me, Troy scoffed. "Man, you say that, but a party that's all about you seems very you to me." I thought about that for a second before conceding that, okay, I can see your point, but this is different. If the party was just about how much better I am than the rest of you niggas, that would be different. My girl is probably about to have all kind of 40 balloons and stuff all over the place. "Well, we getting old, man. This is what happens," Nick shrugged. "Matter of fact, Troy, do I see some gray hairs on this man?" "Hey, you're not far behind," I reminded Nixon. "Troy and the rest of them, those are the youngins. You, me, Charlie, Carter, Roman, we're all knocking on 40 within the next couple of years. I just happen to be arriving first, as usual." "I am aging gracefully as fuck, boy. I don't know what you talking about," Nick said, stroking his hand over his beard, which, notably, had more than a few grays sprinkled throughout it, just like mine. Which, it wasn't exactly that I minded it, it was just that it seemed to have happened very suddenly, out of nowhere. I didn't like that. "I ain't gonna hold you, but I have been seeing them more and more with every cut," Troy said, and I grunted. "Which side are you on?" "The truth," Troy answered, chuckling as he started my cut. "Ain't nothing wrong with getting older, man. You know we look up to y'all." "I'm the last motherfucker to look up to," I laughed, and Nix joined in. "Yeah, man. I don't think Jules is gonna be down with the no ring club like Edison here. You need to keep your focus on looking up to Carter." For some reason, that didn't hit me quite right. I mean, I knew it was just jokes and Nix didn't mean any harm, but what is the no ring club? I asked. Nixon smirked. "Come on, man. You and Astrid been a thing for what, 3 or 4 years now? You haven't taken it any further. I'm just thinking about how things were with me and Charlie, how bothered she was about me not putting that ring on her finger for so long. But I forgot, you and Astrid are all different and shit. Y'all like to be all non-traditional," he chuckled. "She's probably not even thinking about that shit, and neither are you. Y'all don't mind me. The anniversary of the worst day of my life is coming up, so I just been real introspective, you know." "Worst day of your life?" Troy asked, but I already knew the sad answer to this. "Charlie and I lost a baby a long time ago, but the day still kind of fucks with me." "Oh, shit. Damn, man, I'm sorry." I appreciate it, but I'm good now for the most part. I got my lady, we got the twins, we good. Just not the type of thing you really forget. Yeah, I spoke up. You went real dark for a minute there, bruh. Nix nodded. Yeah, I did, huh? Let me lighten the mood a little bit and roast you about those motherfucking shoes you got on, man. What the fuck are those? Instantly, the mood did get lighter, at my expense, but I ain't really mind. These are some type of vegan, organic leather sandal, and they are comfortable as fuck. Damn, Astrid got your ass wearing sandals in the fall. What is the world coming to? I spent a little more time getting roasted about the sandals, which I may or may not have taken part in a little fashion-related bullying myself from time to time, so I could take it just as well as I could dish it. But then the conversation naturally shifted to other things, and I got my haircut finished up and then headed back out to the tattoo parlor for an appointment I had later in the afternoon. That's when it happened. Once it was just me, my client, and the quiet buzz of the tattoo gun, I couldn't quiet my thoughts. My client had their headphones on, immersing themselves in a movie on their phone to distract from the constant pain of the needles, so I couldn't talk to focus on something else. She's probably not even thinking about that shit. That shit meaning marriage. And I don't know, was she? Nixon was right. We were a pretty non-traditional couple, but I didn't know if we were that non-traditional. I just literally hadn't thought about it. Maybe that was a problem that I hadn't thought about what the future held for me and Astrid. Or hell, for me and anybody for that matter. We'd always been focused on living in the moment. We worked in the moment. We were together in the moment. We couldn't get enough of each other in the moment. Once that wasn't the case anymore, in the past, I'd have been gone. But that wasn't quite true with me and Astrid. There had definitely been moments where we argued and fought, where she retreated to a friend's house to regroup before we came back together. Never a breakup like what we gone through before we even officially got together, but definitely what seemed to be the normal stuff that every other couple went through. And we were still here. I wasn't going anywhere, and neither was she. So why wouldn't we be thinking about getting married? This common thing I'd heard over the years, this stupid-ass misconception people had about bisexuality, was that eventually one of us would feel like we were missing something. That shit had always been foolish to me, because if monogamy and commitment were possible in heterosexual relationships, what was the logic in thinking it wouldn't be possible for anybody else? If I chose one person, that was who I chose. Fuck everybody else. No, for real. Fuck everybody else. It was just Asteroid for me. And the revelation blew my mind. Whether or not it was something I felt under the surface before, I definitely felt it now. Definitely recognized it now that it was right in my face. I just didn't know what to do with it, especially since I wasn't sure that she was on that same wavelength. Not about this part, at least. On other things, yes, we were in sync. It was one of the things that attracted me to her, the fact that she was willing to walk away when it wasn't working too. She had been hanging right here with me though. So ultimately, hell, maybe we were on the same page. I tried my best not to dwell on it, pushing it to the far recesses of my mind so that I could finish up with my client without messing anything up. And once they were gone and I could completely zone out while I cleaned my workspace, I let that shit marinate deeper and deeper until it was time for me to go home. I found Astrid in full-blown relaxation mode, tucked deep into the covers and pillows with her e-reader and a glass of wine. "Hey, King," she casually greeted, even though she knew I hated that shit. Or rather, because I hated it, which made it even easier to say the next thing. "Let's get married." Oh, a cliffhanger. I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry to leave it like this, but you will have to just come back for the next one to find out what happens with Eddie and Astrid and this out of the blue question that he has asked. As always, thank you guys for listening along, and we'll see you next time, or you'll hear me next time, rather. Bye.